George Conway joins me now. I wonder, George, if you can just sort of lay out your case here for what you think should happen and why.
Well, I don't think it's that complicated. He needs to be investigated for any number of the charges of the sort that have been brought against others. I mean, Judge Mehta in the District of Columbia called some of the people that he was sentencing, the people who walked into the Capitol on January 6th or broke into the Capitol, he called them pawns. And where are the higher ups, he was asking? Well, you know, they've gotten now with the Oath Keeper indictment last week, they've gotten to maybe the bishops and the knights. But they got a ways to go. They need to go up, and because they were all there, and they say these people, because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump started this all. He started it by lying about the election almost even before it happened, and he kept going. He was the one who basically told them to go up on Capitol Hill. And there are any number of theories by which he could be, you know, potentially held criminally liable for this stuff. I mean, Harry Littman, who you just had on, talked about 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, which is the perfect fit for this. It talks about, you know, it criminalizes, it says if somebody should go to jail for not more than 20 years if they corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding. And statute defines official proceeding to include a proceeding of Congress. And the judges in this district, in the District of Columbia, have held that an official proceeding of Congress includes the January 6th counting of electoral votes for the joint session. And so the question is, did he try to obstruct, influence, conspire to obstruct or influence or impede that proceeding? Yes, he did. Did he do it corruptly? Well, let us count the ways. He lied his ass off for 2 months about the election. That seems pretty corrupt. He tried to coerce his vice president into basically saying, wouldn't you like to have the power to not count these votes and you and I will be reelected? That seems pretty corrupt. Your colleague Rachel Maddow has been showing these certificates that Republicans had prepared that were just fake electoral vote certificates, and those were part of, you know, those were a linchpin of the Eastman memo that was presented to Donald Trump or argued to Donald Trump. You know, did he have something to do with those? Did he know about those fake certificates? Sounds pretty corrupt. And frankly, when you're dealing with Donald Trump, you know, you ask if Donald Trump did X, you're bound to ask the next question, which is, did he do X corruptly? And, you know, sometimes like the answer is yes. It's a fair question to ask. And given the fact that what he was trying to do here, whether he was doing it corruptly or not, or with an intent to incite violence or not, he was trying to end constitutional democracy in the United States, which he was, you know, sworn to preserve, protect, and defend. There isn't a greater crime that could have been committed by a president of the United States. And what that calls for is, you know, and the January 6th committee is all over that. I hope the Justice Department is working its way to that. I mean, it seems to me that there should be, excuse the metaphor, a grand jury proctological exam of Trump and everybody he had contact with who had something to do with all of these efforts to stop the electoral vote from being counted or delay it on January 6, 2021.
Yeah, your point there, Lawrence Tribe, Donald Ayer, and Dennis Africa make this point. Other people made similar points. So basically, given what we know, it's in the public record. I mean, even you reading from the U.S. Code there, based purely on what we know today from news reports, the steady stream of revelations coming from the House Select Committee, the Attorney General has a powerful justification for a robust and forceful investigation into the former president and inner circle, which is to say, it does seem like obviously there's sufficient evidence. There's sufficient facts as a predicate for a criminal investigation of the individual that was obviously driving the whole thing, and everyone knows that. There's no real mystery about whether he was the one doing it.
Right. And he was the one doing it. And this is, again, the gravest crime you could imagine that a president could commit. If you don't at least look at this with the closest possible microscope, you know, you're basically saying that a president is completely above the law. This isn't about, you know, whether or not he spends money that wasn't appropriated from Congress, which would be a big deal. This isn't about whether he, you know, made some argument about the interpretation of a law and pushed it one step too far. This is about the Constitution basically being destroyed. And if the Justice Department doesn't use every available resource to look into whether or not that should be criminal prosecuted, it would be a travesty. And I think, Judge Garland's speech, or Attorney General Garland's speech last week said that they are not going to stop at any level. They're going to go and they're going to look at everybody. I think that's a fair way of interpreting it, or that's the way I would like to interpret it. And I hope he gets to doing that.
Let me ask you, I've often wrestled with this, and you've written in other places about criminal liability that the president's exposed to in other ways. I mean, the New York Times investigative piece on his tax records based off of actual documents seemed to implicate some pretty aggressive tax strategies, with some even called fraud on its face. There's a criminal investigation in New York City District Attorney's Office. There's, we think, a criminal investigation in Fulton County, Georgia, about the, I think, corrupt attempt to bully Raffensperger into overturning the election.
Precise votes.
Yeah, right. So this is someone who has danced on the edge of the law and criminal conviction for a very long time. And is he inordinately savvy to never quite do the thing that's smoking gun, or is he just protected now by the worry about norms, political ramifications, institutional health of American democracy if you try the former president? Like, what is saving him right now, to your mind?
Well, I think what saves him often is the thing that has always saved him, and I think Mary Trump put it quite well in her book. It's just there's always people around him, ever since he was a child, protecting him and trying to keep him out of trouble and taking the blame for things that he does. And beyond that, there's the other thing that he does is he does a lot of this stuff out in the open, which fools people into thinking, well, if this were really illegal and he were if he had criminal intent, he wouldn't have been so open about it. But that's precisely what makes him so terrible, and exactly what it should not protect him, that he was more open about basically destroying constitutional democracy in the United States than maybe somebody else might have been, and which president has ever done before.
It's a bizarrely effective alibi to constantly be just plotting and doing it in public. And then turn around and say, well, clearly I wouldn't have just done this in front of you if there was some sort of...
There's also his state of mind. I mean, he's so seemingly crazy that when he says something that's just off the wall and false, you kind of wonder, he's just nuts enough to believe some of this stuff. And, the fact of the matter is he gets away with a lot because of that.